Today, the affordable housing smoke and mirrors. Hello again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics, well, latest post covering finance and broad news with a distinctively Australian flavour. Well, yesterday the government announced a swathe of new initiatives to support housing. But actually, when you'd stand back and look at it all, it's just a drop in the bucket and doesn't really tackle the critical issues. And in fact, a new housing fund spearheads ambitious quote-unquote affordable housing initiatives. New housing legislation has been introduced into Parliament to deliver, quote, the single biggest investment in affordable and social housing in a decade. States and territories tackling their own housing supply crises will have greater help via new federal bills introduced into Parliament on Thursday. Under the umbrella of three new bills, the Housing Australia Fund Bill, the National Housing Supply and Affordability Council Bill, and Treasury Laws Amendment Housing Measures No. 1 Bill, the government has delivered, quote, the single biggest investment in affordable and social housing in more than a decade. Addressing Parliament, Minister of Housing and Minister for Homelessness Julie Collins said, without a stable home, people, no matter their age, struggle to live in good health, stay in training or education, and to find or keep a job. It's not good for them, for their families, for their communities, or our country. I know this because I've lived it. The Prime Minister knows this because he's lived it. That's why this government is serious about making sure more Australians have a safe, affordable place to call home. This is about working together. It's about partnerships. Yes, it's ambitious because it has to be. It's the only way we'll tackle the challenges we face as a nation. Now, I don't disagree with the sentiment, but the quantum of the intervention here that we're talking about is so small as to really not touch the sides. And I think this is more about fulfilling an election promise than it is about fundamentally tackling the structural issue which has developed over the last 30 to 40 years, which is all about how you make housing affordable. This is, again, playing at the edges. Now, according to the government, the Housing Australia Fund Bill 2023 will deliver on its promise to create a $10 billion fund. The $10 billion fund is a significant investment to deliver long-term returns, to support more social and affordable housing, and invest in acute housing needs, as Collins stated. So let's be clear, it's the returns from the fund that will help deliver the government's commitment of 30,000 new social and affordable homes in the fund's first 5 years, including 4,000 homes for women and children impacted by family and domestic violence or older women at risk of homelessness. Key to the scheme is the reinvestment of funds so as to provide future benefits and aid for those Australian home buyers needing such help. Ms Collins outlined that the Housing Australia Future Fund's returns will be used to deliver, quote, innovative financing techniques that seek to facilitate institutional investment in social and affordable housing alongside established state and territory programs. The scope of returns and the acute housing areas and needs they will address include $200 million for the repair, maintenance and improvement of housing in remote Indigenous communities, $100 million for crisis and transitional housing options for women and children impacted by family and domestic violence and older women at risk of homelessness, $30 million to build housing and fund specialist services for veterans who are experiencing homelessness or at risk of homelessness. And interestingly, an independent statutory advisory body called the National Housing Supply and Affordability Council will be established via the Goal Saver National Housing Supply and Affordability Council Bill 2023. Its role will be to inform the Commonwealth's approach to housing policy by delivering independent advice on housing supply and affordability. And you can bet your bottom dollar that most of those independent advisors will be from the construction sector. According to Ms Collins, this new body is about making sure the Commonwealth receives the very best advice in dealing with Australia's serious housing challenges. And thirdly, Housing Australia will be the new name for the National Housing Finance and Investment Corporation via the Treasury Laws Amendment, Housing Measures No. 1 Bill 2023. And additionally, this extends the Commonwealth guarantee of bonds issued under the Affordable Housing Bond Aggregator from 30th of June 23 to 30th of June 28 to provide certainty to the community housing sector and investors, the government highlighted. And Ms Collins concluded, together the legislation is another step in delivering on the Albanese government's ambitious housing commitments, building on our existing achievements, including the expanded National Housing Infrastructure Facility, the Regional First Home Buyer Guarantee, and the Housing Accord. Describing the new legislation as a turning point for housing in Australia, Ms Collins stated, "I'm proud to continue working hard to deliver on our reform agenda." And aligning with such federal initiatives, also on Thursday, Queensland Treasurer Cameron Dick announced expressions of interest under a $2 billion housing investment fund. The search would aim to provide financial backing for ready-to-go social and affordable housing developments on privately owned sites, including affordable-only proposals. At last year's Queensland Housing Summit, our government committed to double the size of our signature housing investment fund to $2 billion, which means annual funding of $130 million is now available, the Treasurer said. This supports our increased target of 5,600 additional social and affordable home commencements across Queensland by the 30th of June 2027. The market intervention released today expands eligibility to allow standalone affordable housing projects to be supported under the Housing Investment Fund. The Treasury explained this will allow a greater segment of the market to participate in bringing forward new housing and supports the state's commitments under the National Housing Accord. Now, the trouble is, at the heart of this is this neoliberal thinking, which says the market is what we have to allow to work, and we will allow funding to be able to flow through the markets to be able to make those markets work a bit better. But it is just not sufficient, not radical enough, to be able to deal with the fundamental issues that we have in our housing sector in Australia. The truth is that 30 years of neoliberalism, of deregulation of the financial system, and therefore banks lending more, have driven house prices through the roof. There is a reason why housing is unaffordable. And unfortunately, unless we tackle these fundamental issues, then all of these initiatives that the government proudly trumpets will do very little to tackle the underlying issues of housing affordability for ordinary households in Australia. The trouble is, nobody wants to take the big decisions. Nobody wants to own up to the 30 years of failure. Nobody wants to tackle negative gearing and some of those other tax incentivisations that exist at the moment. And of course, nobody wants to upset the apple cart of the construction sector, who pretty much are driving the agenda. So I'm very disappointed by these announcements. A lot of smoke, mirrors and puffage, but no real change in my mind. I'm Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Many thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time.